My name is Azalea, 35 years old, living in Austin, Texas, and working as a technical director at a software company. I used to think I had already moved past the pain of my childhood, until one Monday morning when I received an anonymous email with an audio recording attached. In that recording, my parents and younger sister were sitting around the dining table, laughing and calling me a walking ATM and a fool who thinks she's loved. They had no idea the house they were living in was actually under my name. Have you ever silently sacrificed everything for your family, only to be crushed behind your back by the very people you did it for? If you've ever experienced betrayal from those who were supposed to love you most, share your story in the comments. Hit like and subscribe to the channel, because what happened after that recording was even more bitter than the insults themselves. I still remember exactly the day they called me. It was 5 years ago, just after I turned 30. I was at the office about to step into a strategic meeting with the executive team. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My mom called 3 times, then my sister Cassidy texted nonstop. "It's urgent. Call me back now." I stepped out of the meeting, stood beneath an oak tree in the parking lot, and returned the call. On the other end, my mother's voice trembled. "Azalea, we're about to lose the house. They sent the final notice. The bank's going to foreclose if we don't pay in 30 days. I stood silent for a few seconds, my chest tightening. That old house on the northern outskirts of Austin, where I grew up, where I pulled all-nighters studying under a dim desk lamp, where my dad patched bricks one by one, where my mom hung up photos full of memories, was about to be taken away. Cassidy grabbed the phone. "I know you're making money. You're the boss now. You can help, right? Me, Mom, and Dad, we can't lose the house. You won't let that happen, will you?" I didn't respond right away. I remember that feeling vividly, cornered, stuck between sorrow and anger. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked if I could actually afford it. They simply assumed I would carry the weight. But I still agreed to help. Not because they deserved it, but because I didn't want to lose the one thing that still held some thread of family memory. That same evening, I met with Kate, my personal financial advisor. We had worked together for years. She looked at me, tilted her head. "So, you want to just give them the money directly?" I shook my head. "No. I want to help, but I want to protect myself too." After several hours of discussion, Kate proposed a solution. I created a limited liability company and named it Silver Hollow LLC. The company would purchase the house at a price below market value due to the foreclosure risk, and rent it back to my family through a discreet lending contract. All paperwork, notifications, and documents would be under the name of a third-party financial entity. My family would believe they were making payments to a bank. In reality, they were paying me, through the company. "Do you think they'll actually read the contract?" I asked. Kate smiled, scribbling notes on the draft. "I bet they'll sign it right away if it looks like a regular bank agreement. The real question is, do you really want to do this? They don't respect you." I looked out the office window, city lights twinkling like scattered gold. "I just want to keep something. Not for them. For myself. I had a childhood in that house." Within 3 weeks, the paperwork was complete. I withdrew funds from my savings, paid off the remaining mortgage balance, and officially became the legal owner of the house. From then on, they transferred a steady monthly payment, $1,050. That small amount never covered the full payment, which was actually $61.50 each month. I quietly paid the rest, every single month for 5 years. No thank you. Not once. They only called when something went wrong. Every phone call started with a sigh and ended with, "Can you pitch in just a little more?" Sometimes I sat alone staring at the bank statements, watching the numbers add up, 18,450, then 72,900, then 198,300. When it hit 300,000, I finally had to stop. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I started to ask myself, were these people still my family? I stayed silent. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't complain. I kept working, kept helping, kept enduring. I told myself that at least they still had a home. That maybe someday they'd understand. Until that morning when I heard that recording. Until I heard my mother say, "She helps us because she owes us." Until I heard Cassidy laugh, "She thinks she's being noble." As if we ever asked her to. I had sacrificed and they called it obligation. I had stayed quiet and they called it stupidity. I had preserved their dignity, and they stomped all over me. And in that moment I realized, it wasn't because I gave too much that they became so cruel. It was because I was too afraid to let go of something I should have walked away from a long time ago. I sat frozen for 15 minutes after hearing that recording. Their soft laughter, their whispered insults pierced through my trust like poisoned blades. I thought I was used to their coldness, but pain always knows where to grow next. I reopened the email and looked closely at the sender. No name, just an anonymous account. But when I hovered over the reply to address, a familiar name appeared: Amanda Russo. I could hardly believe my eyes. Amanda was my cousin, 3 years older than me. We used to be as close as sisters when we were kids. She taught me how to braid my hair. She defended me when Cassidy bullied me at 12. But everything fell apart when Amanda had a falling out with my mom over a property dispute involving our grandmother's will. After that, my family branded her the traitor, and I was forced to cut ties. I stayed silent. I chose my family. And Amanda vanished from my life as if she had never existed. Until this morning. Not even 5 minutes after I sent a reply asking if it was really her, my phone lit up with a video call from Amanda. I answered. And when her face appeared, something inside me cracked open, and somehow mended at the same time. "Azalea," she said gently like spring wind. "Are you okay?" I didn't know whether to nod or shake my head. I just sat there. "I'm sorry you had to hear it that way," Amanda continued. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. "I've had that recording for 2 weeks. I wrestled with whether to send it." I asked quietly, "Why now?" Amanda sighed, resting her chin on her hand, eyes steady. "Cassidy contacted me last week. Said your mom was seriously ill and needed emergency treatment. She said they couldn't afford it and asked me to lend her $50,000. I clenched my fist. They still hadn't stopped. Deceit was never their limit. Amanda went on. "At first I believed her. I wanted to believe things had changed. But then I accidentally overheard their family Zoom meeting. I was logged into the same software through my sister's real estate firm, and Cassidy forgot to log out of her account. When they had their family meeting, I heard everything. And I realized, I couldn't let them keep using you." I let out a soft laugh, but inside my chest ached with that familiar dull pain. "I always thought, at least a part of them cared," I whispered. Amanda shook her head. "They're used to living inside illusions. You're the only one in that family who doesn't belong to the cycle." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to know exactly what they said. But I couldn't. Just imagining it already hollowed me out. Amanda hesitated, then added, "You know, your mom used to call me a traitor. But I've never betrayed you. And if you ever need me, I'm still here." I stared at the screen, into the eyes that once gave me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. In Amanda's eyes, I saw a sincerity I had long searched for in my parents, but never found in over 30 years. "You know that recording could destroy your relationship with the entire family, right?" I asked, even though deep down I knew everything had already fallen apart before I even opened that email. Amanda nodded. "And I also knew staying silent would mean you'd keep carrying this burden for another 5 years." I looked at her for a long time. Neither of us said anything. But in that silence I felt something shift, as if I had finally crossed an old bridge I'd spent my life fearing. I ended the call with a small nod. No thank you, no promises. Just a quiet moment between two people who had once been family, now beginning to find each other again among the ashes. I turned off the screen and returned to my sunlit home office. The recording was still playing. I listened again, not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to remember exactly what they said and why there was no going back. I opened my notebook and wrote one line: "Cassidy, 50,000, mom's illness, fake." I needed to remember. Not to take revenge, but to never forget how it felt to be reduced to a tool by your own blood. I stepped out onto the balcony. The May breeze carried the scent of oak and dust. In the past, whenever I got hurt, I would bottle it up and hide it deep inside. But not this time. I would use it to change everything. And the first step was to stop pretending I didn't know the truth. I drove slowly along the tree-lined road that led into the northern suburbs of Austin. The 2-story colonial homes sat quietly beneath the afternoon sun, their deep red shingle roofs and chestnut-colored doors still familiar after all these years. When I pulled up to the gate, I didn't turn the engine off right away. I just sat there looking through the windshield at the house I grew up in, now legally owned by Silver Hollow LLC, which meant it belonged to me. The front door was still the same one my father used to fix after every winter storm. The left wall still had the faded paint stain where my mother once made me stand and face it after I failed a math test in 6th grade. I knew every brick, every creaky stair, every gap in the kitchen window where I used to peek out when I wanted to avoid the family. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, holding my notebook and some financial paperwork as my excuse for the visit. My mom opened the door. Her makeup was light and she still wore the same perfume she'd used since I was in high school. She gave me a half-hearted hug, smiling with her lips but not her eyes. "You came at the perfect time. I'm baking banana bread. Come in, the kitchen still feels the same," she said, tilting her head slightly. "You look tired?" I gave a faint smile. "Probably just work. I'm just stopping by. It's been a while since I checked some of the loan documents." Her eyes flickered, but her tone stayed casual. "Oh, your dad keeps those in a safe place. But sit down, I'll get you some lemonade." I nodded and stepped inside. The hardwood floors were still polished. The old fabric couch had been replaced with beige leather. But the round kitchen table remained, the same one where I used to do math homework while Cassidy lounged in the living room, munching on snacks with her feet propped up like a princess. I walked into the living room. In a framed photo displayed above the fireplace was a Thanksgiving family portrait from 4 years ago. I stood off to the far left, my face nearly obscured behind my father's shoulder. Cassidy sat in the center, her arm around Mom's waist, cheek pressed to hers. It looked like the perfect family, if you didn't know what lay beneath. I sat down and gently placed the notebook on the table. My mom handed me the lemonade and took the seat across from me. "How's work? Everything okay at your company?" "It's fine. I just transitioned to a new project. Been a little busy." "I heard the tech industry's been rough lately," she said in a probing tone. "And you working like that as a woman, it worries me sometimes." I didn't react. I'd heard that line too many times. From the moment I chose computer engineering, she'd always doubted me. Meanwhile, Cassidy, with her short-term communications degree and job as a fashion showroom manager, was always praised for being stylish, charming, marriageable. Dad stepped out from the study, jingling a set of keys. "Azalea? Good to see you home." I stood up slightly and nodded. "I need to review the mortgage paperwork from a few years ago. There are a few items I want to double-check." Dad nodded and walked back into the study, returning with a brown leather folder. "Here it is. But I don't think you need to worry. Everything's still current." I flipped through the documents slowly, pretending to study them. I had arranged them all myself years ago, but I needed a reason to stay a little longer, to experience this house clearly for once, without illusions or misplaced hope. Mom poured more lemonade and leaned in. "So, when are you planning to settle down? Your dad and I are getting older. Every time I meet up with friends, they brag about their grandkids and I don't know what to say." I set the folder down. My voice stayed even. "I don't think I need a wedding to validate my life." She sighed and glanced at Dad as if she'd heard that answer 100 times. "Don't you ever think about having kids? You're getting to that age." I smiled with a hint of frost. "I think I've done enough to prove my worth, even without following your template." Silence fell. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to stop. Cassidy came down the stairs, chewing gum, phone in hand. "Oh hey, you're here. Thought you had a board meeting or something." I looked at her and felt like I was staring at a younger version of my mother, polished on the outside, selfish to the core. "Just had a few documents to check," I replied. Cassidy flopped onto the couch, legs crossed, still scrolling. "If it's about the house stuff, don't ask me. I don't touch any of that. Total headache." I nodded slightly, my eyes falling on the notebook with this morning's note. Cassidy, 50,000, Mom's illness, fake. She didn't even remember her own lie from just days ago. I stood, folder in hand. "I'll make copies to review at home. I'll let you know if anything needs signing." Dad nodded. Mom said nothing. Cassidy kept her eyes glued to her phone. I walked to the door, footsteps quiet on the glossy wooden floor. As I reached the car, I looked back at the house one last time. The sun had begun to set, casting warm light on the wall where I used to press my face and cry in silence. I thought I had buried those years. But memory doesn't disappear. It just lies dormant, waiting to be named. And today I had seen it clearly, raw, without room for denial. That evening when I walked back into my own home, The living room light was soft and golden, trying to offer warmth. But inside I was cold. Mom met me at the door, gave me a tight, calculated hug, the kind I knew too well. "Azalea, you're here. I'm so glad," she said in a fragile voice. Cassidy stood beside her, wearing a sorrowful expression unlike her usual indifference. "It's good you're here. Things have been hard." Dad sat on the sofa, dark circles under his eyes, his hands trembling slightly as he held a glass of water. "Sweetheart, I didn't want to trouble you, but my heart, it's not what it used to be. The doctor says I need rest." I stayed silent and simply nodded. I'd heard those words many times before but never wanted to believe them. We sat down at the dining table, the same old round wooden one, though the chairs had been replaced. Mom brought out a platter of tender braised beef, the smell blending with mashed potatoes and fresh greens. "You know," she began, her voice trembling as if she were about to cry, "these past few months have been really tough for me and Cassidy. Cassidy just lost her job. The company's been downsizing." I looked at Cassidy. She gave a small nod and there was real worry in her eyes. "We need a little help from you," Mom said, "just $3,000 a month." I glanced at her and suddenly noticed the sparkling diamond necklace around her neck. The same piece I'd once seen on her credit card bill, paid using the assisted living allowance my father had quietly hidden from me. I said nothing, just held her gaze. Something didn't feel right. Her words didn't match the luxury she was wearing. $3,000, I repeated slowly. "Is that a specific figure or just a number you came up with now?" Mom inhaled deeply, her eyes blank, then exhaled. "It's the number we think is reasonable. Your dad can't work anymore and Cassidy needs to care for the baby. Everything's piling up." I didn't respond, just quietly ate the food in front of me. But in my mind, pieces were clicking into place. The contradictions in her story, the evasive look in her eyes, and that glinting necklace. After dinner, while Mom cleaned the dishes, I looked around the living room. A new flat-screen TV, a cream-colored leather sofa, and updated wall art. They were quiet evidence that they weren't exactly struggling, at least not enough to forego those luxuries. Cassidy turned to me and said in a low voice, "You know, I've been trying to pick up extra work, but it's not easy." I replied gently, "You've done your best." The conversation continued with cleverly veiled pleas, leaving me feeling both sympathetic and angry. I felt for them. There were times they really did face hardship. But I was angry that for years, I had shouldered so much quietly, and they had never once expressed gratitude. Instead, they twisted truth and falsehood whenever it suited them. In the end, I made no promises. I told them I'd think about it and needed to review my financial situation. As I stood to leave the table, Mom called after me, "Azalea, you're the backbone of this family. Everyone's counting on you." I turned around, my voice cold. "Family isn't always a place where people get to count on others, Mom." Climbing the stairs, I felt the weight of fatigue in each step. I knew I had to come up with a plan, but this plan couldn't just be about giving more money. It had to be something deeper. A reclamation of fairness I'd ignored for far too long. I sat on the upstairs balcony, looking down at the small garden where I once played as a child. Memories rushed back, pain seeping into every corner of the house. But this time I wasn't letting it weaken me. I knew that tonight's dinner was just one part of the performance they'd rehearsed, a play complete with tears, smiles, and deceit. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I would show them that while I could be quiet and endure, no one could exploit my kindness without consequence. After that dinner, I realized I couldn't keep staying silent. The feeling of being used wasn't just from the cruel words in the voice recording. It was also etched into every action of my family. I needed to prepare a decisive move, something that would ensure they couldn't hurt me again. The next day, I visited my personal attorney's office, a longtime friend who had worked with me on many business ventures. Rachel, my lawyer, was sharp, meticulous, and deeply professional. When I told her everything, from the voice recording to the phony dinner, she looked at me with a knowing, determined gaze. "I'll help you gather every financial record tied to them," she said. "Contracts, payment documents, even texts and emails they've sent. Also, to be sure, you should install a discreet recording mic so we can have proof of any conversation involving money or attempts to manipulate your assets." I agreed without hesitation. Inside my purse, I quietly placed a tiny recording device, nearly invisible. Every family dinner and conversation from that point forward was recorded. Every word, every scheme was carefully documented. In the days that followed, I received updates from Rachel. She sent me scanned copies of bank statements, lease contracts, and sensitive messages I had never seen before. I was stunned reading the cold black letters on paper, proof that for years I had paid for most of the mortgage without ever being acknowledged. Some messages broke my heart more than others. Cassidy had once written in a family group chat that I was just pretending to help, saying, "That money was expected, no one owes her anything." At one point, my mother even suggested reclaiming funds by scrutinizing the properties I owned. I didn't cry. I was used to betrayal by now. One night, when the family invited me for dinner to have a serious talk, I recorded yet another round of schemes. They discussed how to pressure me into paying more, considering psychological tactics, even legal threats to ruin my reputation at work. I knew I couldn't let them succeed. The next day I called Amanda, my cousin, once distant, now the only one I trusted. "Amanda, what do you think I should do with all this mess?" I asked. Amanda responded quickly, "You can exercise the buyout clause in their lease. They signed a contract with your company, and if they miss rent payments, you have full legal rights to own the house outright. You can also begin eviction proceedings under state law. That's the only way to protect your assets." That idea made me both nervous and awakened. I understood that things couldn't go on like this anymore. It was time to stand up, not just for myself but for everything I'd built. Time to draw the line against years of betrayal. "I'll do it," I said, voice firm. But I didn't choose to sell the house. To me, it wasn't just property. It was proof of everything I had endured, of the sacrifices I made in silence, never once acknowledged. Instead, I began building a different plan. One that wouldn't just protect me, but would show them that loyalty has limits and no one gets to exploit kindness forever without facing the cost. I continued gathering files, perfecting the evidence, and worked with Rachel to prepare the necessary legal documents. Every step was calculated, leaving no room for loopholes. Under her advice, I planned to keep the true ownership a secret so the family couldn't prepare their defense. I needed the element of surprise, to let them finally feel the power of the daughter they had once dismissed. Meanwhile, I maintained a calm, indifferent facade every time I saw them. I told them I was reviewing finances, and couldn't help right now. I kept my face unreadable, my voice steady, because in battles like these, composure is the sharpest weapon. They had no idea I was planning a turning point. A transformation that would force them to see me in a way they never had, not as the naive daughter or the silent provider, but as someone they could no longer manipulate. I don't need their love. I just need them to acknowledge the truth and respect what I've done. And I won't let them keep taking advantage of me. One gloomy afternoon in mid-March, as I sat reviewing all the property transfer documents and rental agreements, a small file caught my attention. It was a bank statement from the Federal Retirement Fund, listed under my mother's name, something I didn't remember requesting, but had been included by the bank when Rachel, my lawyer, asked for all financial transactions related to the house. I opened it thinking it was just another supporting document. But when I saw a withdrawal of $18,450 made last spring, I stopped. The transaction had been done online, through an IP address registered in Austin. The note scribbled under reasons simply read, "Flexible investment, quick return." There was no indication that my mother had approved or signed off on it. I flipped to the next page. The verification section showed the money transfer had been confirmed via a phone number, Cassidy's. I leaned back in my chair, a chill running down my spine. In my hands, the raw truth was laid out line by line. My sister had impersonated our mother and drained her retirement account, every cent, gambling it on cryptocurrency during a market crash. I still remembered that day. Cassidy had posted a photo from Palm Springs, holding a cocktail, captioned "Soul Cleanse Getaway." Turns out it was funded by Mom's savings. I stared at that bank statement for nearly half an hour. Not because I was shocked. Cassidy had never been cautious, but because I didn't expect her to cross that line. This was the one account Mom always protected. The one meant to cover her prescriptions, heart checkups, or long-term care if needed. I didn't call Cassidy. I didn't tell Mom. I just did what needed to be done. I made copies of the documents and sent them to Mom's personal attorney, the same one who had helped handle our family's property papers in the past. In the email, I wrote simply, I am forwarding evidence that your daughter, Cassidy Morgan, committed identity fraud and unlawfully accessed your federal retirement fund, withdrawing a total of $18,450. I have no intention of filing a police report or lawsuit. As long as you agree to sign over all property rights of the house to my company and cease involvement in any decisions regarding my assets. If you do not, I will submit a formal complaint to the Federal Retirement Fund Administration and let the legal process take its course. I hit send. Less than 2 hours later, her attorney called. His voice was hoarse and hesitant, clearly scrambling. Miss Azalea. I just received the documents. To be frank, Mrs. Morgan had no idea about that withdrawal. She's quite distraught. I understand, I replied calmly. I don't want to destroy my sister. But I can't keep being treated like a bottomless atom. He promised to speak with my mother and respond within the day. I ended the call, my mind steady. The next afternoon, my mother texted me. Just 3 words, we need to talk. I didn't reply. But when my lawyer messaged me later that evening confirming my mother had signed all necessary papers, officially transferring ownership of the house to Silver Hollow LC, I knew she'd gotten the message. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. I just felt lighter. Like a piece of history had closed. A piece I no longer had to carry on my back. I printed the documents, filed them carefully, and locked the hard copies in the company's safe. My plan was now clearer than ever. My family had no idea what had just happened. My mother went silent. Cassidy continued posting online like the world was hers to toy with. But that silence wouldn't last. And when it finally shattered, they'd have nowhere left to turn. Because now, every road led back to one place. Me. And I was no longer in the mood to step aside. 3 days after the final deed was signed, I activated the automated rent notification system from Silver Hollow LLC. The first email went out Monday morning at 8:30, notice of late rent payment. This month's rent is 7 days overdue. Please pay by the 15th to avoid legal action in accordance with the signed agreement. No one replied. On the 16th, the system sent the second notice, including a formal letter signed by Rachel. Notice of lease termination due to breach of payment terms. I didn't add a personal message. The letter said everything. That afternoon, my phone started ringing non-stop. First it was Mom. She called 5 times, leaving 2 voicemails. Her voice sounded panicked and shaky. Azalea, I just got a letter. Saying we're being evicted? What the hell did you do? I didn't respond. 15 minutes later, Cassidy called. I let it ring until it stopped. Then a new text popped up on my screen. Are you insane? This is our family home. You have no right. I gave a cold smile. Right? I had everything they never bothered to think about. Legally signed documents, bank records, recordings, payment history, notarized transfers, all thoroughly reviewed by lawyers. That evening I went to see them myself. No warning. I wanted to see the look in their eyes when there was no more way out. The door opened. My mother stood frozen, pale, still holding the eviction letter. What do you want? She asked, her voice raspy. I walked in, calm as if I were attending a business meeting. I don't want anything. I'm here to confirm that the notice I sent is valid. All property rights have been legally transferred to Silver Hollow LLC. This house is no longer under your use or control. Cassidy came storming out of her room, voice shrill. You're trying to humiliate us? You take the house, now you want the whole neighborhood to know. I looked at my sister. For the first time, she felt like a complete stranger. No connection. No childhood memories strong enough to redeem this. No, I replied. I'm not keeping the house. I'm transferring it to Safe Haven for Women, a shelter for victims of financial and emotional abuse. They need the space. My mother stumbled back against the wall, eyes wide in disbelief. You're turning our home into a shelter? After everything this family has done for you? Exactly, I said slowly. Because those women value a safe home. This family doesn't. My father stepped out from his office, his face stiff. Don't think you can just do this. I'll take you to court. I pulled a stack of papers from my bag and placed them on the coffee table. If you'd like, go ahead. But before you do, read through these, every single page signed by you all. Including the eviction clause for missed payments. And the deed your wife signed certified by a lawyer. If you think you can win a case over property you willingly signed away, then good luck. The room fell silent. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound left. I placed another document on the table. The shelter will officially take over this house within the next 6 weeks. But according to the eviction notice, you have exactly 30 days to move out. I'm not asking for extra money, I won't countersue, and I'm not seeking compensation. All I ask is that you leave on time. Cassidy roared, "You're tearing this family apart." I looked at her, not angry, not emotional. Just a strange calmness in my heart. This family fell apart a long time ago. I just stopped cleaning up the mess. I turned away and headed for the door. Before crossing the threshold, I paused and looked back at my mother. "Do you remember what you used to tell me as a child? A person who keeps their word keeps everything." Today, I'm simply keeping my word. That kindness is not an obligation. I left that house for the last time, carrying nothing but peace in my heart. Behind me, they started yelling. My father's voice was low. Cassidy was screaming, my mother sobbing. But I didn't look back. I had heard enough. I had endured enough. And for the first time in my life, I knew I didn't owe them anything. A week after I sent the official eviction notice, the family's attorney called Rachel's office. They wanted to renegotiate the terms, citing my father's health, my mother's emotional instability, and Cassidy's severe unemployment. They requested a 3-month postponement of the eviction and asked that I withdraw the plan to transfer the house to Safe Haven for Women. Rachel forwarded the details to me in a short email, along with the recorded call. I listened only once. Their lawyer plainly said, "If Ms. Azalea refuses to cooperate, we'll be forced to pursue legal action under the claim of retaliatory eviction, which could damage her personal and professional reputation, especially if there's a possibility she manipulated family assets using private information." I let out a soft laugh. They really thought they could intimidate me like that when I was the one holding every piece of evidence: signed contracts, bank records, verified audio recordings, chat logs, even Cassidy's voice saying, "My mom has no idea I pulled out 18 grand to invest in crypto," had me laughing so hard. I forwarded the entire file to Rachel. She replied with just one sentence: "Don't respond to anything. Everything is legal and solid. They're targeting your emotions, not your case." 3 days later, I received notification that Cassidy was officially under federal investigation for financial fraud and identity theft. No one came forward to bail her out. No one in the family dared deny her actions. They simply tried to shift the blame to me, the one who brought the truth to light. My mother called nearly every night. I saw her name flash on my screen, but I never answered. I listened to the voicemails only to keep them as evidence. "Azalea, please. I didn't know what Cassidy did. Whatever you want, I'll agree. Don't take this too far." In another, her voice trembled. "Are you really going to turn your back on this family? Don't blood ties mean anything to you?" I used to question whether I was right or wrong. But then I'd replay the recordings, the mocking texts, the words that cut like blades. "She thinks she's so noble. She just owes us for everything since she was little." And I knew my kindness had been used like a bottomless resource, requiring no thanks, no respect, not even acknowledgement. I didn't answer those calls. I wrote a short email instead, sent to both my parents. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped fixing everyone else's mistakes. No greeting, no closing. I wanted them to understand I was no longer the shadow cleaning up behind them, mending what they refused to admit was broken. The next day, my father left a voicemail. His voice had none of its usual composure, only rage and scorn. "You're the one who destroyed this family. We've fallen apart because of your selfishness." I listened to the entire message, didn't fast forward, didn't stop. But for the first time, not a single tear fell. I saved the recording and labeled the file, "Final Truth." On the 15th day since the eviction notice was sent, I received word from Rachel that my family had hired a local law office and officially filed a motion to contest the eviction in district court. Their argument claimed that the property title transfer lacked transparency, and that the eviction was an act of retaliation against family members. Rachel called me right after. "What do you want to do? Do you want to appear in court, or should I deal directly with the judge?" I didn't need long to think. "Go ahead. I'll send over all the recordings, financial records, lease contracts, payment clauses, the deed with my mother's signature and Cassidy's identity theft documentation. Everything's notarized and backed up. Rachel exhaled, then gave a soft chuckle. Then you have nothing to worry about. They're just flailing in the dark. I nodded, staring at my computer screen where the final blueprint of the house being handed to Safe Haven lit up in detail. The bedrooms would become shelters for women like the person I used to be, silent, self-sacrificing, and betrayed. 3 months later, I returned to the old house on a sunny morning. No more shouting matches, no cloying perfume, no high heels tapping on hardwood floors. Instead, gentle laughter from the kitchen, the sound of water in the backyard where a few women were watering tomato seedlings, and the soft creak of a wooden door welcoming a new chapter. My house, once a twisted nest of cruelty and greed, now bore a new name, Silver Shelter. The new sign hung on the gate with a small inscription underneath, a home for women hurt by those closest to them. I stood in front of it for a long while, then stepped inside as a guest, not a ghost in the background anymore. The space inside had been renovated. The dining room turned into a shared living space. The walls that once held family portraits now displayed artwork made by the residents, bold colors painted by once shaking hands, telling stories of survival. The second floor had been divided into 6 small bedrooms, each with natural light, clean beds, closets, and a wooden plaque where each woman could write a message to herself. As I walked down the hallway, I read a few. I don't need anyone's permission to be at peace. I was deceived, but I was never weak. I'm not going back. My future is mine to build. The last one made me pause. Felt like it was meant just for me. Sister Marlene, the lead coordinator, came out of the laundry room, sleeves rolled up, smiling wide. Azalea, everyone still talks about you. Since you handed us this house, we've welcomed over 12 women. 4 have found stable jobs. 1 just registered to study accounting. I hugged her gently. This wasn't my doing. I just brought the key. You all were the ones who opened the door. She squeezed my hand, her eyes more serious now. I've never met anyone braver than you. People usually give from what they have left. You gave what had once been taken from you. I didn't answer. I just smiled. I didn't feel brave. I just finally stopped playing the role of the peacemaker. In the weeks that followed, I officially accepted the offer to become a part-time volunteer advisor for the organization. Twice a week, I came to the shelter, helping women write resumes, prepare for interviews, or simply listen to them talk about ex-husbands, parents, cousins, or those who used family as a weapon to slowly squeeze the life out of them. One time, a woman named Kelsey gripped my hand after a session, eyes red and puffy. I thought I was the only one whose own family drained her dry. But then I met you. And you're proof that we can still stand back up. That sentence left me quiet the entire afternoon. I began rewriting part of my life, not on paper but through every choice I made. I cut back my hours at the company and handed over more leadership responsibilities to the new team. I started spending more time on myself, revisiting childhood books once hidden away because my mother believed girls shouldn't get obsessed with engineering, and I picked up painting again, something I used to love but had set aside to study programming just to be taken seriously. The only tie I kept with my family was Amanda. She became the one relative I chose to hold on to. Every weekend we shared coffee at our usual cafe, chatting about little things like new movies, heart-healthy meals, or just laughing about who stayed up late because their cat knocked over a water glass. One chilly afternoon in the backyard of Silver Shelter, she told me, "Family isn't about blood. Family is who you choose to keep, even after everything's fallen apart." I nodded, no words needed. I had written a letter once, to my parents and to Cassidy. Not in hopes of making them come around. Just to give myself closure. I sent it through certified mail requiring signature confirmation. But a week later it came back. Stamped in red ink on the envelope. Refused by recipient. I wasn't surprised. I opened it again and reread every word I had written. My family once taught me to sacrifice, to yield, to stay silent. But today I choose to love the right people. And the first person I'm learning to love is myself. If that makes you think I'm cruel, then I'll accept being the last cruel one in a family where love was never honest. I didn't tear that letter up. I folded it and placed it in the back of the bookshelf, next to the closed case files. Not to remember but to remind myself, I owe them nothing more. And I don't need anyone's permission for the path I've chosen. What would you do if one day you realized the people you loved most didn't see you as a person, but as a walking wallet? If you've ever stood where I stood, at the edge between responsibility and freedom, between obligation and loving yourself, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments below. I believe we all have a limit. And when family crosses that line with hurt, choosing to walk away isn't selfish. It's saving yourself from a cycle of blind sacrifice. To me, family is no longer a place that makes me shrink under pressure. It's a place that, even when I walk away from it, I carry peace in my heart. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment. I want to know, what would you do in my place? Would you have the courage to choose yourself again? And if you'd like to hear more powerful true stories about people navigating the complicated dynamics of families that look perfect from the outside but hide painful truths within, make sure to follow this channel. There are so many stories waiting to be told, not to place blame but to remind each of us that we are not alone.